There is a version of you that only exists after midnight. It makes worse decisions. It feels things more intensely. It says things the daytime version of you would not say. This is not a personality flaw. It is a documented neurological shift that happens to every human being on Earth during the biological night. Psychologists and neuroscientists have a name for the framework that explains it. They call it the mind after midnight hypothesis. It was formally proposed in a 2022 review published in Frontiers in Network Physiology, and it synthesizes decades of research into what actually happens to the human brain when you are awake at night. The core finding is this: the brain you are operating with at 2 a.m. is measurably different from the brain you had at 2 p.m. Not tired in the way most people mean when they say tired. Structurally different in its priorities, its emotional processing, its risk tolerance, and its capacity for rational judgment. Here is the mechanism. Your brain runs on a circadian clock, a biological rhythm synchronized to light and dark that regulates nearly every system in your body. During the day, this clock promotes wakefulness, cortical activity, and cognitive performance. As night falls, it begins withdrawing those resources. Cortical activity drops. The prefrontal cortex, the region responsible for rational judgment and impulse control, becomes less active, and the regions responsible for emotional reactivity, reward seeking, and impulsive behavior become relatively more dominant. This shift is not gradual in the way sleep pressure is gradual. It is timed, biological. It happens on a schedule whether you sleep or not. The first thing that changes is emotional regulation. Research using fMRI shows that during nocturnal wakefulness, the amygdala, the brain's primary threat and emotion detection center, becomes more reactive to negative stimuli. At the same time, connectivity between the amygdala and the prefrontal cortex weakens. The prefrontal cortex is what normally moderates the amygdala's responses. It is the part of your brain that says, wait, think this through before you react. At night, that moderating signal gets quieter. The amygdala gets louder. The result is that things that would not have bothered you at noon feel genuinely devastating at midnight. A text message that would have read as neutral during the day reads as hostile at 11 p.m. A memory that sits peacefully during daylight hours surfaces with full emotional weight at 2 a.m. This is not irrational sensitivity. It is a predictable biological state. The second change is in reward processing. The brain's reward system becomes more active and less discriminating during the biological night. What feels like a good idea at midnight is not being evaluated by the same cost-benefit system that was running during daylight hours. The brain is more attracted to immediate reward, less concerned with future consequence. This is why the worst decisions tend to cluster between the hours of midnight and 4 a.m. Not because people are morally weaker at night, because the neural architecture governing risk assessment is running at reduced capacity and the reward signal is louder than usual. The third change is attentional bias. During nocturnal wakefulness, the brain shifts toward negative attentional bias. It prioritizes threatening information. It scans for problems. It gives more weight to worst-case interpretations of ambiguous situations. Combined with the weakened prefrontal regulation and the heightened reward seeking, this creates a specific psychological state the mind after midnight researchers describe as a perfect storm for behavioral dysregulation. The data on the behavioral consequences is striking. Rates of impulsive decision-making spike sharply in the late-night hours. Self-reported emotional distress peaks between midnight and 4 a.m. in study after study. The probability of acting on a destructive impulse, whether that is sending a message you will regret, making a financial decision, or engaging in a conflict that could have waited, is measurably higher at night than at any other point in the day. You are not imagining that nights feel different. The brain you are using at night is a different configuration of the same hardware. There is one more layer that rarely gets discussed. The overnight personality is not entirely a liability. The same reduced prefrontal inhibition that makes nighttime riskier also makes it more creatively uninhibited. The filter that stops unconventional thoughts from reaching consciousness is quieter at night. This is why late-night conversations feel more honest, more raw, more like the actual person underneath the daytime performance. The things people say after midnight are often the things they have been unable to say when the filter was fully engaged. It is not that nighttime reveals a worse version of you. It reveals a less managed version. Whether that is worse depends entirely on what you do with it.